And as I said on May 29th, the report is my testimony, and I will stay within that text.
And he did. 7 hours. 2 congressional committees. Circus. Theater. Homelessness, all this other stuff haven't gone anywhere. All sorts of theater. Mueller got up there and he, for all intents and purposes, stayed within the context of that report. The questions that people had, meaning there are certain contradictions in your report. Why did you do this as opposed to that? Mueller avoided those questions. Republicans did a pretty decent job of drawing a circle around it, but people didn't care about the contradictions in the report. The Democrats, for their side, got Mueller to say that they would indict Trump if he was out of office, and then Mueller walked it back. I want to talk about it. I'm going to show you the elements Democrats got Mueller to say. I'm going to show you the elements that Republicans got to draw a circle around. Mueller stayed within the contents of the report. If somebody is telling you it's a win for either side, they're not necessarily being truthful. And you may say it's a win in the sense that you can draw a circle around the problems in Mueller's report. Mueller looked befuddled. Some of the times he didn't even know what was in the contents of his own report. I suspect Mueller was more of a figurehead in this case, but in this case they dragged him out, got him to put on the show. No one is the wiser for anything. Welcome to the Soapbox. My name is Jamarl Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, if you enjoy this content, you find yourself coming back to this channel often, please consider supporting this content through PayPal or Patreon, not to mention liking this video if you like it and sharing it, of course, if you do indeed like it. It's not that I love asking, it's more so that they demonetize every video that I've put out today, including videos with the radical title of Tulsi Gabbard Tulsi Gabbard sues Google for $20 million. That's edgy, in which case they need to monetize the video. So you'll find that a lot of channels are bringing this up right now because it seems that seems to be what YouTube has decided to do to independent media. Nevertheless, we're moving forward on this. Mueller testifies for 7 hours to two committees. Now, he deflects over 100 times. Seriously, he deflects questions over 100 times. Watch this. This is just a snapshot.
I'll leave it with the report. So I would have to refer you to the report on that. Direct you to the report for how that is characterized. And I would direct you to the report itself.
Okay. Well, I looked at 182 pages of it.
It's outside my purview. It's outside my purview. Outside my purview. It's still outside my purview. I can't answer that question. I can't get into details. Can't get into that. The letter stands for itself. I can't get into it. I can't get into that internal deliberation. I am not going to get into it. I'd refer you to the coverage of this in the report. I refer you to our lengthy dissertation on exactly those issues that appears in at the end of the report. I'm not going to delve more into the details of what happened. If it's in the report, then I support it because it's already been reviewed appropriately. I'm not going to get into what was in.
This is sad. This is sad. 7 hours of that. And you know what's wild? When I was on Sputnik, I was talking to Lee Stranahan, and I said, look, they need to ask him questions on the discrepancies in a report. How can you not indict Joseph Mitzford? I mean, why didn't you talk to Assange? I mean, and he says, Mueller is going to say, I refer you to the report. And that is literally what Mueller did over and over and over and over again. Over 100 times. Over 100 times. It goes further than that, though. Take a look at this. This is various points. So the Democratic Party thought they scored a win here. This is when they were flying at their highest. Immediately after Mueller said this.
In fact, you are actually unable to conclude the president did not commit obstruction of justice. Is that correct?
Well, we, at the outset, determined that we, when it came to the president's culpability, we needed to go forward only after taking into account the OLC opinion that indicated that a president, a sitting president, cannot be indicted.
Now, that sounds like you just said that you would have indicted Trump if it weren't for the OLC opinion. Meaning, the Democratic Party is like, oh! All right, it gets further. It gets further. Democrats were flying high on this. Here's another one. Ted Lieu.
We have heard today that the president ordered former White House counsel Don McGahn to fire you. The president ordered Don McGahn to then cover that up and create a false paper trail. And now we've heard the president ordered Corey Lewandowski to tell Jeff Sessions to limit your investigation so that you stop investigating the president. I believe a reasonable person looking at these facts could conclude that all three elements of the crime of obstruction of justice have been met. And I'd like to ask you the reason again that you did not indict Donald Trump is because of OLC opinion stating that you cannot indict a sitting president, correct?
That is correct.
We've heard.
All right. Now, at this point, Democrats are like, got him. Yes. That's what Democrats are like everywhere. Everywhere you can find a Democrat, they're like, yes. Every Democrat was looking for every microphone that they can find. We're gonna impeach his ass. We're gonna impeach his ass. We got him. Mueller finally gave us what we needed to go after the president of the United States, because Mueller just said if it wasn't for the OLC opinion that they would have got Donald Trump's ass. Now, here's the catch. He wants to make this argument that a reasonable person will also conclude that you are going after the president for obstruction, and you're arguing obstruction because there was nothing there on the Russia stuff. The very fact that you're focusing on obstruction kind of draws a larger point around this original thing, that obstruction is ancillary. Obstruction of what? Well, obstruction on this notion that he was working with the Russians, but that didn't found to be true. And it draws a larger circle around the fact that it wasn't true, since you were going for obstruction, the lesser thing that has nothing to do with the original thing. He wasn't working with the Russians. And the fact that he wasn't working with the Russians, your case gets so much weaker that you need to find anything to get him on. You were trying to impeach him on a racist tweet. It's not that I like the tweet. It's not that I even thought what Trump was doing was right. I'm trying to make this point that you're sliding all over the place, trying to find any and everything to impeach him on, which makes the impeachment thing looks weaker. In this case, you are chest stumping on getting the president on obstruction, when the original case in this was supposedly that he was working with the Russians. If you had something on him working with the Russians, you would have got him on working with the Russians. Ergo, you don't. And so you're looking for anything else to hit him with, in this case, obstruction. And in this moment, the ancillary charge, obstruction to something that didn't exist, they think they got him. And here's another interesting point. The obstruction stuff, the pushing hard from this particular angle. I saw all of these Democrats screaming, yes, we got the president. We can now go after him for obstruction. Problem. A few minutes, or in the next committee hearing, he comes out and he takes it all away.
Go to questions. I want to add one correction to my testimony this morning. I want to go back to one thing that was said this morning by Mr. Lieu, who said, and I quote, "You didn't charge the president because of the OLC opinion." That is not the correct way to say it. As we say in the report, and as I said at the opening, we did not reach a determination as to whether the president committed a crime. Go to questions.
He took it away. He took it away. He says, look, I know what I said before, but That's, we didn't reach that determination. I just want to walk that back. Meaning the chest thumping and the celebration, at that point, the chest thumping had already taken place. But the key point here is that Mueller took it away. Whatever win, you're going to try to go out with this. There's some win that's taken out of their sales from that particular thing, meaning the moment that you get on and you try to argue to somebody, well, Mueller said this, well, the other person, the Republican or whoever else there who's against citizens, so Mueller also took that back. That's not a win if he's taking it back. Here's one more point to consider. If it's you, if you're the president of the United States, and you believe that there is a witch hunt that is going after you, saying that you were working with the Russians, and you know that it's a lie, you know they're making it up, you know they're doing it for political reasons to go after you, in your capacity as president, do you do anything to try to stop what you consider to be a political witch hunt? And if you do, can you be hit on the knuckles for it? I guess technically you can be hit on the knuckles for it, but if you're asking the American public if they understand why you behave that way, I think the answer would be yes. If you're an independent or Republican, you can totally understand why an individual would try to take action for something that they believe is a political witch hunt. That's not obscene at all. That's not strange at all to me. That makes all the sense in the world. In a political sense, your political people may say, whoa, 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 don't do that, because that's going to look bad. But if your name is Donald Trump and you have the power to try to stop what you consider to be a political witch hunt, yeah, you may try to stop a political witch hunt. Also, by the way, none of that stuff actually took place. None of what Lou is saying there actually happened. Nobody fired Comey, what's his name? And Mueller wasn't taken off the case. Regardless of what Trump wanted, none of it happened. You're trying to get obstruction of justice on something that the president voiced, not even something that the president did. Like, do you realize how weak this looks? And you're asking me, does this look overtly political? Yes, it does. If you hit Trump on something that was real, I would be okay with that. You think I love Trump out here being racist and whipping crowds into racist hysteria? I don't. Do you think I like the tweets that he's putting out, that he's running on this kind of hatred? No, I don't. Do I like it that you're trying to use a tweet for an impeachment? No, I don't. That is not what impeachment was supposed to be used for. And not to mention, overtly political. And it's obscene. Understand what I mean? It's one thing if you beat him in a political sense. And you can make an argument that this is a political sense, but this is the grossest aspects of politics. You're using a political instrument that's supposed to be used there from a governmental purpose to try to take down the president of the opposition or the opposing party. That's a problem. That's a problem. I'm sorry, that's a problem. It's not that I love Trump, but Lord knows I hate that worse. Hate that worse. So then, Republicans get their due.
Go to questions. I want to.
And when the FBI interviewed
Jim Jordan has questions about Misfit. Jim Jordan apparently has been watching this show, because this show has brought that up. How do you not indict Misfit? Who is Joe Misfit? He seems to be a part of the intelligence, and yet in the report you had this guy as some kind of Russian asset. Not to mention the weird thing that's taken place between him and Papadopoulos in regards to where Papadopoulos got the information. You indicted all of these other people. Why not Misfit? In fact, you guys act like you couldn't even find Misfit. Why not Misfit? Listen to Mueller's befuddled answer.
And when the FBI interviews him, he lies 3 times, and yet you don't charge him with a crime. You charge Rick Gates for false statements. You charge Paul Manafort for false statements. You charge Michael Cohen with false statements. You charge Michael Flynn, a 3-star general, with false statements. But the guy who puts the country through this whole saga, starts it all for 3 years we've lived this now, he lies, and you guys don't charge him. And I'm curious as to why.
Well, we can't get into it, and it's obvious, I think, that we can't get into charging decisions.
He can't get into charging decisions. Again, he's staying within the context of the report. I charged them. But I'm not going to explain to you why, because that's within the, the report. I can't get into that stuff. Yeah, I know, but that's a little weird, dude. I mean, why did you indict all of these other people? This guy gets off. This seems strange. Yeah. We can't get into that. You have to read the report. We read the report, and the report is not clear on this. Can you explain it? Nope, can't explain it. That's a report. That's a charging decision. That's amazing. This gets weirder. Look at this one. This one is awesome.
Your report famously links Russian internet troll farms with the Russian government. Yet at a hearing on May 28th in the Concord Management IRA prosecution that you initiated, the judge excoriated both you and Mr. Barr for producing no evidence to support this claim. Why did you suggest Russia was responsible for the troll farms when in court you've been unable to produce any evidence to support it?
Well, I'm not going to get into that any further than I already have.
But
that's amazing. That's amazing. And he's right, by the way. I did this video myself. Mueller and it brings up an indictment on these Russia companies. He's assuming that these companies will never show up in court. His assumption was wrong. These companies did show up in court. And they're looking for discovery and everything else. Like everyone else that would have their due day in court. And in looking for their due day in court, Mueller is unable to give evidence to link this company to the Russian government. And the judge excoriates them for doing so, saying, you must stop doing that. You should have never done that. There's nothing that you're presenting to us that is making a link between these two things. And by the way, not a link between those two things. The contrary argument makes more sense. A company that's a capitalist company seeking to maximize their profit, using the fact that there's an election that's taking place in order to maximize their profit by getting people to click on ads. This is a capitalistic endeavor. In fact, it makes more sense than the Russian government using Buff Bernie ads and masturbation ads to somehow sow dissension in the American population. Are you serious? Democrats ran with this. Do you realize the majority of those ads took place after the election? Democrats ran with this. They ran with this. Mueller can't explain why the judge excoriated them. Mueller can't explain why they linked those two things when those two things really didn't have a link. And the judge went further, making a point that just because, a media organization may say something, the standard in a courtroom is higher than that of a media organization. They can use innuendo, they can use smears, they can use things that people just make up and guesses. You can't do that in court. That's what he's talking about here when he's bringing this up to Mueller, saying that judge excoriated you for saying that the Russian government was behind this. Explain yourself. I can't get into that. That's part of the report. I can't get into that. No, that judge went after you because they say you were making this stuff up. And even further, and God, man, fucking Republicans need to start watching this channel. The DNC lawsuit. What they should have brought to Mueller was, why is the DNC lawsuit saying that your report amounts to hearsay and not credible enough to be used in a court of law? Can you explain that? I would have loved for one of the Republicans to ask Mueller that. Why is the DNC not accepting your investigation as being credible enough to be held in court? Why? Can you explain that? I would have loved for the Republican to put that to Mueller and have Mueller say on the record that the Democratic Party is being overtly political, something, but to get them to at least say it and put it to them and put into the populace of the Democratic Party is saying that the Mueller report, the report that they fought in order to get out, the report that they were screaming, throw your bodies in the street, the way TYT was talking about if Trump fires Mueller, that this report is not credible enough to be used in a court of law. Wow. Look, I've already seen Rachel Maddow try to say that this was somehow a win for Democrats. It's not. I'm sorry. As for being a win for Republicans, Mueller didn't say anything else. Mueller didn't go further than his report. And the only way you can really say it's a win for Republicans, only in the sense that you can kind of draw a circle around the fact that they didn't find anything on Trump. They backed away from this notion that the only reason they didn't try Trump was because of the OPC thing. And by the way, you can even make an argument that it's a win that he would even back away from that, saying, no, we didn't even broach that issue because it wasn't an issue for us to broach because we had this ruling in mind. It's not a win. Mueller did what Mueller does. Nothing. He solidified the narrative. The narrative is Russian hacking. The problem is that maybe you can consider it a win in the context of he could not back that up. And when asked, right here on the record, he couldn't explain why this court of law is hitting him on the knuckles for saying so. It's a meh. It's a meh. Echoes bad during playback on Mueller. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's try this again. All right, let's try this. I would have to cut this. Crap. Let's try this. Let's try this one more time. Let's do playback again, man. All right, I'm just going to go through the various videos and I'll kill sound.
Your report famously links Russian internet troll farms.
In fact, you are actually unable to conclude the president did not commit obstruction of justice. Is that correct?
Well, we, at the outset, determined that we, when it came to the president's culpability, we needed to go forward only after taking into account the OLC opinion that indicated that a president, a sitting president, cannot be indicted.
We have heard today that the president ordered former White House counsel Don McGahn to fire you. The president ordered Don McGahn to then cover that up and create a false paper trail. And now we've heard the president ordered Corey Lewandowski to tell Jeff Sessions to limit your investigation so that you stop investigating the president. I believe a reasonable person looking at these facts could conclude that all three elements of the crime of obstruction of justice have been met. And I'd like to ask you, the reason again that you did not indict Donald Trump is because of OLC opinion stating that you cannot indict a sitting president, correct?
That is correct.
We've heard.
Go to questions. I want to add one correction to my testimony this morning. I want to go back to one thing that was said this morning by Mr. Liu, who said, and I quote, "You didn't charge the president because of the OLC opinion." That is not the correct way to say it. As we say in the report, and as I said at the opening, we did not reach a determination as to whether the president committed a crime. Go to questions.
And when the FBI interviews him, he lies 3 times, and yet you don't charge him with a crime. You charge Rick Gates for false statements. You charge Paul Manafort for false statements. You charge Michael Cohen with false statements. You charge Michael Flynn, a 3-star general, with false statements. But the guy who puts the country through this whole saga, starts it all for 3 years we've lived this now, he lies, and you guys don't charge him. And I'm curious as to why.
Well, we can't get into it, and it's obvious, I think, that we can't get into charging decisions.
Your report famously links Russian internet troll farms with the Russian government. Yet at a hearing on May 28th in the Concord Management IRA prosecution that you initiated, the judge excoriated both you and Mr. Barr for producing no evidence to support this claim. Why did you suggest Russia was responsible for the troll farms when in court you've been unable to produce any evidence to support it?
Well, I'm not going to get into that any further than I already have.
But you have left the clear impression throughout the country through your report that it was the Russian government behind the troll farms, and yet when you're called upon to provide actual evidence in court, you fail to do so.
Well, I would again dispute your characterization of what occurred.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah, that's amazing. Look, people, it sounds like Mueller was just there to instantiate the narrative. Like, the day he took this investigation on, I don't even know if Mueller wasn't anything more than a figurehead from the standpoint of working with this particular case. I have no idea. All I know is that Mueller did what Mueller was supposed to do. I am not going beyond the context of this report. He did exactly that. Not go beyond the context of that report, meaning there's nothing that they learned that was new from this process. The Democrats is going to run out and chest thump. They've learned nothing new in this process. And I have to be real honest. Again, it is a sad thing to try to go after Trump on obstruction, because it does get across that your original thing that you were going for him for fell apart entirely. That a conspiracy theory swept up the country for the last 3 years. And your party, instead of dealing with things that actually affect people. Do you realize my grandmother, she's ill. And the family has to try to find a way of dealing with the fact that she's ill. The family, kids, elderly, have to continue to work because they can't make ends meet otherwise. And in continuing to work, they also have to find a way to deal with her and her issue. Not to mention they have their own medical issues associated with it. That's just the family. I don't think my family is atypical. I think my family is pretty much every other family that have to find ways to maneuver and deal with things that are inherent to them while they themselves have to make ends meet themselves and are barely making ends meet in and of themselves. When the push for Medicare for all takes place, that's not just the push for healthcare. I hope you understand what I mean. That's also an economic issue. That's taking off some of the weight that is put on the American families. There is a reason why healthcare was the number one issue in that last election, because what I am talking about is not atypical. And by the way, pushing for the Russiagate stuff and having this particular spectacle, while simultaneously people are having this struggle saying healthcare is the number one issue, is sad. I'm sorry, it's entirely sad. You've put Mueller on a pedestal, and you've acted as if he was going to come down with the word of God, and he did. He cleared him. It's not an exoneration, if you want to say it and use that terminology. For all intents and purposes, Trump wasn't working with the Russians. That was your central thesis. It fell apart. And then you drag Mueller's ass out here to do something that Mueller didn't want to do. And the fact that he didn't want to do it should have told you that he wasn't going to give you what you wanted. And he didn't. He didn't give you anything. He said, everything I need to say is in the report that I most likely didn't write. 7 hours. 2 congressional committees. Spectacled in theater. The problems of the country remain, and here we are with spectacle and theater. I would argue to you, however, that the spectacle and theater are for the precise purpose that there are problems in the country, and that dealing with those problems would deal with the wallets of all of the millionaires that are involved in this particular spectacle and theater. I'll leave it here. Before I leave, Darren Levy, I am saying this now. The Dems helped to elect and re-elect Reagan and elect GHW Bush. They would do the same for Trump and Pence. Darren, I hope you're wrong, but I don't know that you're wrong. It is very possible that Donald Trump can get reelected. Anybody that's telling you otherwise is wrong. They didn't think Hillary Clinton could lose. Hillary Clinton lost. They didn't think Brexit would take place. Brexit took place. Trump can win again. Do not doubt it. If he wins again, Social Security, Medicare, all those things on the chopping block. The death penalty that just been enacted, those people are going to get axed. The policies towards Iran, Venezuela, all that stuff is going to go off the deep end. He will take an election as a mandate, even if he wins by 1 vote. Just know it. Stay tuned. Thanks all.